Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because, well, we are about to dismantle a massive 50-year-old broken promise. For half a century now, we have been told over and over that a singular cure for cancer is right around the corner. Today, we're going to look at the hard biological physics that show exactly why we can't just simply cure it. But more importantly, we're going to see why the reality of oncology containment is actually a much more fascinating and ultimately hopeful story.
So to really get a handle on where we are, we kind of have to look at how this all started. Back in 1971, President Richard Nixon signed the National Cancer Act. He famously called it a moonshot, and advocates at the time were confidently promising meaningful progress by the American bicentennial. That was just 5 years later. And since that signature, roughly $200 billion in public funding has been poured into chasing a singular finish line, a universal cure.
But then you contrast that massive, historic mountain of money with this really stark reality. 55 years later, the 5-year survival rate for pancreatic cancer sits at just 13%. It's a completely brutal number, right? But it does us something deeply profound. The lack of a cure isn't because we're lazy. It's not a lack of willpower, and we certainly didn't skimp on the funding. It's actually because we have been fighting the entirely wrong shape of the problem.
Okay, let's really dive into this. You know that pitch you've heard your entire life, the one that says AI plus CRISPR plus mRNA equals a finish line? Well, it runs on a massive category error. We tend to treat cancer like an invading bug that we can just squash, but it isn't. As this quote perfectly captures, cancer is evolution by natural selection, running on hyperspeed right inside your own tissue.
Section 1. The linguistic wall, a categorization mistake.
You see, the very first wall blocking a cure isn't actually biological at all. It's linguistic. The word cancer automatically implies it's one single thing. But it's not. It is a blanket term covering over 200 distinct diseases that merely share exactly one trait: cells multiplying when they shouldn't be. That's literally their entire common feature. Because of this linguistic trap, we end up grouping things together that make absolutely no biological sense. The cancer in a smoker's lung and the cancer in a child's bone marrow have less in common than a hummingbird and a shark. And to make things even more mind-boggling, researcher Bert Vogelstein over at Johns Hopkins found that even a single colorectal tumor, just one tumor in one person, typically carries between 30 and 70 distinct mutations. Every single tumor is genetically its own unique snowflake. Take breast cancer, for example. That single umbrella label actually hides at least 4 completely different, molecularly distinct illnesses. You have luminal A, luminal B, HER2 enriched, and triple negative. And here's the kicker. Each of those requires completely different drugs. The chemo that saves a HER2-positive patient does basically nothing for a triple-negative patient. This just brilliantly illustrates that our taxonomy of naming cancers by their starting organ, which, by the way, we've done since doctors in the 1800s could only look at organs, is a total 19th century fiction.
Which brings us to Section 2, the evolutionary wall. Evolution on fast forward.
Back in 1976, a pathologist at the University of Pennsylvania named Peter Nowell published what was basically a heretical paper at the time. He quietly rewrote cancer biology by revealing that a tumor is not just a clump of identical bad cells. It's actually a population. It is a small, rapidly evolving ecosystem. Let's walk through exactly how this biological mechanism works. Step 1. A cell begins dividing without permission. Step 2. As it divides, the daughter cells accumulate new mutations, creating this massive forest of slightly different genetic hens. Step 3. You introduce chemotherapy. Mechanically speaking, this drug acts as a severe selection pressure. So if the drug successfully kills 99% of the cells, it just naturally selects the 1% that happen to carry resistant mutations. And then Step 4. Those survivors divide. Within months, you've created a tumor grandchild that is naturally optimized to ignore the drug entirely, all on the timescale of a single TV season.
Carlo Maley over at Arizona State University points out something fascinating. Tumors run the exact same 4 billion-year-old evolutionary process that produced humans. Because of this, trying to cure evolution is fundamentally incoherent. You're asking medicine to permanently outsmart natural selection. It is exactly like trying to win a chess game where the opponent gets a brand new piece every single move.
All right, Section 3, the statistical wall, the math of being alive.
So the crucial point here is that cancer isn't some outside invader you can catch like a virus or sterilize away like bacteria. It's your own cells going slightly wrong. And that going wrong isn't a malfunction. It is an absolute statistical guarantee. Let's just look at the math for a second.
In 2013, biophysicist Eva Bianconi worked out that the human body contains roughly 37 trillion cells. Most of those divide regularly. Every division copies about 3 billion DNA base pairs. Even with a staggeringly accurate error rate of just one mistake per billion bases, decades of life mathematically guarantee quadrillions of mutations. Eventually, the wrong combination is just bound to land on the wrong cell at the wrong time.
And this actually creates a really fascinating puzzle. It's called Peto's paradox, which was first noticed back in 1977. If cancer is just a numbers game, massive animals like whales and elephants should be absolutely drowning in it, but they aren't. Why? Well, because they evolved radical, uncopyable biological redundancies over millions of years. Joshua Schiffman's research shows elephants carry 20 copies of the tumor suppressor gene TP53, while we only have one single copy. Vera Gorbunova found that naked mole rats, as weird as they look, produce a heavy hyaluronic acid that physically prevents tumors. Basically, massive animals evolved heavy armor just so they could exist at scale.
Now, what's so incredibly interesting about this biological comparison is what it says about us. Humans are basically halfway up the evolutionary ladder. We live long enough to accumulate those quadrillions of mutations, but we aren't physically massive enough to have evolved those heavy genetic redundancies like the elephant or the whale. So cancer is more or less the bill for hitting 80 in a body biologically engineered to last 40.
Moving on to Section 4, the final boss, the metastases ceiling.
The brutal, honest reality that kind of shatters that dream of a singular cure is this. Roughly 90% of cancer deaths are not from the primary original tumor. They're from metastasis. These are the cells that travel through the blood or lymph and seed colonies in the lungs, liver, brain, and bones. Just look at this incredible contrast. Modern oncology is genuinely triumphant with localized tumors. Early-stage localized breast cancer survival is at 99%. That's amazing. But there is a terrifying statistical cliff when those cells distribute across the body. Stage 4 survival drops to 30% for breast cancer, 8% for lung, and a devastating 3% for pancreatic. Neither surgery, nor whole-body radiation, nor our celebrated immunotherapies can universally solve the problem of rogue cells distributed across an entire body. And lurking right beneath metastasis is this phenomenon oncologists call dormancy. Dormant cancer cells literally hide slowly enough to completely evade our best imaging tools. They just sit there, way below the threshold of our best treatments. Then, years later, maybe due to a hormonal shift or just aging, they wake up. This is exactly why a woman treated successfully in her 40s can unfortunately see recurrence in her 60s. It's not a new cancer, it's the old cells, finally finishing the job. Now, I know we constantly see these flashy tech headlines, right? Pitching AI and CRISPR as the ultimate saviors. And yes, faster sequencing and better drug models are entirely real, and they are incredibly useful. But the actual constraint here isn't computational at all. It is biological physics. AI can read a tumor's genome faster than ever before, but it absolutely cannot stop the tumor cells from actively mutating while the AI is reading it.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, the reality of containment, moving the line.
Because of all these biological realities, we really have to let go of that rhetorical dream of a cure, a state like a polio-free world that cancer biologically cannot reach. Instead, let's look at the honest, rarely spoken plan of modern oncologists, which is containment. The goal isn't an absolute cure. The goal is to catch it early while the math favors you, treat it long enough to push the average age of cancer death past every other cause, and essentially make it a manageable late-life condition, kind of like high blood pressure, until something else takes the patient first.
And I want to be absolutely, incredibly clear about something right here. 55 years of funding has not failed. Not at all. It has yielded extraordinary, monumental containment victories. Childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia is now survivable in over 90% of cases. HPV-driven cervical cancer can be functionally prevented in vaccinated populations. We have added literal decades to lives that once would have ended in the very first round. This is a massive scientific triumph. It just isn't the shiny cure we were originally sold. So I want to leave you with a rather profound thought to chew on today. Cancer is simply the price of being a multicellular organism with cells that divide. It's a bill paid in installments, it's accelerated by age, and it's rewritten by every single drug we throw at it. Since every cell in your body is, right now, at this very moment, copying itself with slight errors, isn't cancer simply the bill built into being alive? The reality of oncology containment isn't some story of defeat. It's an incredible testament to exactly how far we can push the limits of human biology. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.